First of all, the program through which I got the internship is open for every tier of college. They were actually from tier 3 college as well. There are a lot of people actually from tier 3 college that. The way I found out about this program was LinkedIn itself. DSA, you have to focus on things, yes, but not a lot of people got selected. Even people who wrote the correct solution didn't get selected.
Hello, guys, and welcome back. And today I have someone with me who has done so many things, especially in his student life. And I was quite inspired. And I sent him a message on LinkedIn that I want you on my channel. And he said that, Avinash, I'm really up for that, but please give me some time. I want to study because my exams are on the way. So we have to understand one thing: whatever he has achieved does not mean that he's not studying. So let me introduce you with Manas. Manas is currently, obviously he's going to become an intern at Microsoft. And he has also mentioned that he is in, he has done some great things in Code Force. And if I talk about CodeShare, so obviously these things are something which I feel Manas can tell us better than me. So Manas, let us know about you and what you have done.
So, first of all, hello everyone. I'm Manas Tiwari and I'm a third year undergraduate at Velo Institute of Technology, Chennai. So, just a little bit about me. So, I'm actually from Bihar, but I was born in Nepal and I was raised there for like first 12 years of my life. Then I moved to India and then I studied here and now I'm here. So, it's quite a journey from Nepal to India, then to southern India.
Okay.
So,
Great. So Manas, I can see that you have in your LinkedIn, you did mention that you are going to become an intern at Microsoft. Now, first of all, I
yes.
want to understand one thing. If I talk about you are being from VIT, so obviously I understand you have a great amount of exposure. I have friends in VIT who have told me that they get the good amount of exposure. But if I talk about the students for tier 2 and tier 3, they think like if I want to go to Microsoft, either I have to crack IIT, NIT, or I have to become the best programmer in the world, then only I'll get this kind of an opportunity. So I want you to burst that myth for them and let us know how a student from who does not belong to a tier 1 college can actually crack these kind of things.
So, first of all, the program through which I got the internship is open for every tier of college. So, it was not
Okay.
that only, especially it was for me or for tier 1 college or something. Microsoft Engage was open for like the program that I got the internship, the Microsoft Engage program. It was open for every other college, like every student who was a 2024 pass out could apply for it.
Okay.
So, people who got selected, like I connected to a lot of peers on LinkedIn who got selected for this program, just as me for the internship. They were actually from tier 3 college as well. There are a lot of people actually from tier 3 college that like
Okay.
it. Hmm.
Okay, fine. So it feels like that this kind of a thing, if I talk about, it's available for all student. But Manas, I want to understand one thing. How come this is not I mean, it's not like kind of a public thing for students. Like, is it hidden somewhere? Like maybe some part of students have the access to, and if not, what do I have to do as a student if I talk about, let's say if I'm watching this video right now, and if I'm going to graduate in 2016, 2026, let's say example, that means next year I'll be eligible for this kind of a program. So how will I come to know about these kind of programs?
Yeah. So first of all, you have to be aware. Like you go on networks like LinkedIn. The way I found out about this program was LinkedIn itself. So you need
Okay.
to go on LinkedIn. You need to find people who got internships like this. You need to talk to them. Basically, you have to expand your network. So
Okay.
yeah, I feel that there are people in tier 3 college who don't have a big network or a network of people who are interns in big companies. Yes, but there are a lot of other ways to make networks. Go on LinkedIn, find people, talk to them. That's what.
Okay, so you're mentioning that if I want to be if I have to get these kind of newses with me, I have to be aware of my network. Now, the question comes in obviously, if I talk about in terms of network, so what kind of a network I should be tapping into? Because if I go to LinkedIn, it's a big website. There are so many people on website. So
Yes.
what kind of a hashtags if I talk about, what kind of a people I should be start following, so I'll start getting these kind of information for me.
Basically, yeah, you can follow people from, say, follow people who are like from tier 1 college, say, like
Okay.
I'm not specifying the tier, but say follow people who are from colleges or follow people. There are some accounts on LinkedIn, like they frequently share internship opportunities. And
Okay.
to be honest, even I found a lot of opportunities through videos like what Avinash is making. So I explored some YouTube, and I found some videos which say like, okay, these opportunities will be there for this year and all. And they're on LinkedIn, like you'll find some people, they have a list of internship opportunities for next year. So I know it's very scattered, but you need to like don't leave any stone unturned, and just find whatever you can and just keep them safe, have them somewhere, and just keep following them. That's what.
Okay, so you're trying to say is that you don't have to just sit and complain that I don't think I'll get an opportunity. You have to just keep on exploring. And obviously, one thing I want to add, like this is going to be a ripple effect if I talk about. So, like let's say if you have followed one person, so obviously a lot of things are going to come from his end. So
Yes.
it's going to be kind of a ripple effect. So obviously that is going to help. Now, Manas, I want to understand one thing. Now, obviously, you got to know about this particular program if I talk about, and you have applied for that as well.
Mhm.
Like you, there were thousands of people who had applied for that, but what
Yes.
you did differently compared to those kind of people, so like you got selected and those were not selected, so like if you can break it down, like what was your process, what things you learned, so like that can actually help the viewers.
Okay, so first of all, the people, I just burst this myth that the people who got selected were not just from tier one college. The
Okay.
Yeah, there were a lot of people even from tier three college or tier two college. All those, it was just a mixed distribution. There was no specifying that okay, only tier one college students from tier one college got selected or something. So the second thing was the first two rounds. I'll specifically talk about my internship, like the process that I went through. So first two rounds are based on quiz. It, there were like 10 questions in the first quiz and one question in the second one. So it was basically, first was, yeah, it was a bit DSA based, and second was critical thinking. So what I want to say is like, yeah, you'll have to focus on DSA, you have to focus on things, yes. But the biggest thing that you have to focus on is critical thinking. Like you won't find the questions anywhere on the internet or something. So whatever you study, whatever algorithms you study, just critically think over it. That's what I'll say. Like that's what I did in my first year. Whatever I studied, I just critically, I was just thinking over everything critically. So that's one thing. Mm, the other thing is, yes, you'll have to be aware of what kind of quizzes and what kind of DSC quiz are is being asked all around. And to be honest, I didn't do anything very different from what other people do. And obviously, there is a bit of luck factor as well. So yes, that's it.
Okay, keeping aside the luck factor, if I talk about, you mentioned about critical thinking, but you are the first person who is mentioning anything apart from DSA or programming language or this or that. What is critical thinking if I talk about? Because this is the first time I believe a lot of viewers are going to hear this term.
Yeah. So I'll specifically talk about my second round of quiz, where we were given a problem and the solution was pretty easy. Like I don't think anybody will have a hard time finding the solution. But the thing was, we had to explain the solution. So a lot of people found the solution, but not a lot of people got selected. Even people who wrote the correct solution didn't get selected. So I feel that they were looking for out of the box solutions, or something like that was not available very easily. So what I did was I wrote something like, I'll just generalize it. So the solution to the problem was like in a forward fashion. So I just wrote the solution in a backward fashion. So I
Okay.
just critically thank what all solution was possible for that, and I wrote the most out of the box solution, you can say. So that's what critical thinking is like. You have to think in every possible way to the problem, not only just one way. Like, okay, this is the answer to this question, and I'm satisfied with the answer. No, you have to think in every possible way and find out the best way. That's what that's what critical thinking is in short.
Okay, so you're trying to say basically, like, let's say if I want to go from path A to path B,
Mm-hmm.
like that does not mean that I have to follow just one single path which is available for me. I have to be creative if I talk about, I have to
Yes.
be imaginative if I may, so that I can, I mean, reach to that part. Now, I understand the importance of critical thinking, but why do you think companies, instead of asking a programming questions related to that, or maybe why they're interested in these out of box thinking or maybe critical thinking, according to you?
The thing is, the problems, they every day there are new problems, right? So every day we need a new solution for that. Every day we need a better and optimized solution to the same problem or the different problem. So companies are looking for people who can think critically. Like even if you go to online assessment rounds and all, The questions that are asked are like they are very different from say like standard questions that we find on say lead code. So if you don't know how to think critically, you might have a hard time solving the problem. But someone who has a good critical thinking skill and who is not even familiar with say lead code and all, but familiar with DSA concepts and all, they can easily solve the problem without even knowing that a standard problem like this exists. So it's just about thinking.
And correct me if I'm wrong, like you did mention that the people who gave the right answer were also disqualified.
Yes, there were a lot of those people.
Okay,
Sadly.
so I mean, what company, like if I talk about in your case, what Microsoft was looking like, okay, like let's say if I want to fly from Mumbai to Delhi,
Hmm.
do you have the imaginative answer? If you have the, I mean, bookish answer, if I talk about, they are not looking for bookish kind of an answer. They are looking for something with which they can, I mean, they want to see your creativity. And I want to just give a quick summary about it. Why? Because if I talk about when companies are discussing about the problem, the kind of challenges you face at Microsoft, Google, at Facebook level, they are not something which are written somewhere. You won't be able to find on Google like how to add two numbers in Java. This is not the kind of problems they are solving. Now, you mentioned a term lead code. Now, if
Yes.
I talk about in your GitHub profile, I could see you have written Code Chef, you're mentioning about lead code, you have mentioned about competitive programming. So, first of all, like what is competitive programming and what is the importance it plays, at least in the career right now as a student? If I talk about, let's forget about the, I mean, 5 years down the line or maybe 7 years down the line, but how important that is for me right now.
Yeah. So competitive programming, the critical thinking that I was mentioning a lot, competitive programming is directly linked to that. So
Okay.
what competitive programming is we'll be given with some say real life scenarios, kind of problems that we have to solve with programming language. Now there's some constraint to it, and constraint are basically based on time and memory, and that's what competitive programming is. You have to solve this problem while staying under the constraint. So that's competitive programming in short. But the thing is here, we to solve the problems we use a lot of algorithms, we use a lot of different techniques, and to use the technique and to know how to use them, we need critical thinking skills. And these techniques are very closely related to DSA techniques. They are technically DSA, but just a bit more. And and as we all know, DSA problems and all are very common in online assessment rounds and interviews. So that is how competitive programming helps us in getting placements and interviews. That's all. But
Okay. So,
mm,
yeah, please continue.
yeah, but the thing is, competitive programming is little bit more than just DSA. So it requires a little bit more effort and lots of critical thinking skills. That's all.
Okay, so you're trying to say is that like if I'm going to like start doing competitive programming, if I talk about, so I'll be able
Hmm.
to develop this out of the box thinking, if I may. So the solution is quite simple. I have my basics intact with me. I have my basics intact with me. I've learned a lot of things. Now I have a question in front of me. I have to not give the right solution, but also a solution which is out of the box so that companies can understand how imaginative thinking I'm having. Now, I want to understand from you, Manas, like you have mentioned about these websites like Lead Code or Code Chef. So, how do they help? Like, obviously, if I'll go, they will just give me a question and I have to figure out the answer. But how do they actually help me there?
Yeah. So the thing is, I'll explain this with an example. So there's a friend of mine. So I saw his profile. Like I saw one of his questions that he solved. He solved the same question with six different approaches. Like
Okay.
one, we have something called dynamic programming and competitive programming in general algorithms. So he solved it using say bottom up, top down, optimize, not optimize. So he solved it in all six ways. And for every solution, he had to think a lot. He did a lot of critical thinking that okay, he came up with a solution. Now he wanted to optimize it or write it differently. He he was thinking about the same problem again. So how do I solve it more optimally? He came up with another solution. And like this, he came up with six different solutions, and the last solution being the most optimized one. So that is how not lead code or say code versus or competitive programming solving any problem based on DSA helps like this. They just help us develop our critical thinking, and they just like broadens our horizon of thinking. So that is actually useful in every sphere of life, not just programming.
Okay, so you're trying to say is that, like, obviously, like, I like the example which you have given to me. Like, instead of solving a particular challenge in just one way, your friend actually solved in six different ways. So it means you have applied your thinking in six different ways to find out a solution. So that is quite important, and I would say the reason behind that is, like, if I talk about when we are talking about scales, so obviously, if we are not creative, if we are not making the permutations and combination right, what can happen? So obviously this actually happens a lot. Like, I'll give a very simple example. um, I want, like, obviously you must have seen, like, as a viewer, if I talk about, you have never seen YouTube goes down, you have never seen Google goes down. Like, even in the COVID time, when almost everyone was on the internet, it did not go down because they had planned for that. And this comes from critical thinking, if I may. So, like, now, Manas, I want to understand one thing. This critical thinking, if I talk about, it is just limited for the Microsoft kind of a company, or I can, like, this is also, like, if I'm going to use this critical thinking, so I can get selected in Google, or maybe Oracle, or maybe Facebook, or maybe different big companies.
It's not limited to Microsoft. It's there with each and every company. And critical thinking is not just limited to programming as well. Like
Okay.
everywhere you go, in every interviews, they'll just want people who can think out of the box.
Okay. Now, one more thing I want to understand from you, like, obviously, when we talk about these internships, if I talk about, so there are so many things you have to learn. Like, someone says you have to master a programming language, someone says you have to master DSA, someone says you have to get your, I mean, quantitative thinking and various different things. So, if I'm preparing right now, I'm a student right now. So, obviously, I have my personal life. I have my friends with me. Obviously, my parents are going to bother me that why you're not studying for your exams. So, how many hours in a day I can spend? I mean, I should be spending for this critical thinking, if I may, so that I can actually excel myself during these interviews.
Yeah, actually, I get asked this question a lot, and I'll tell you this is the hardest question to answer.
Okay.
So there are actually a lot of fields that you can take. Like there are people who focus on competitive programming, on critical thinking. There are people who like development. They develop website, they will develop apps. Then there are people who make contributions on open source. There are a lot of things. There are a lot of things, and it's just the personal preference of students where they want to go. So what I generally follow is most of the time I'm basically solving competitive programming problems. And there was a time in my first year when I was learning how to develop apps, so I know some app development as well. So that this is what I want to advise to everyone, that know one stack of development, either be it app development, be it web development. Know to develop either a website or an app. That is also sought after in the interviews. They will want to check your object oriented programming skills. How do you design things, low level design things. And after that, after my first year, I was focusing more on competitive programming and on algorithms. So talking about college that you asked, um, I do attend college, but what I feel and what my personal opinion is, um, college courses can be learned in say a week before exams, and that's what mostly I do. Like I'm not advising to skip classes, but say if you can leave a few classes, not everything, leave a few classes and still cover them up before the exam, that's the best thing that you can do. But I'm not saying that that's the only way to do. I've seen people who, there are people who attend all their classes. There are people who along with classes are able to do competitive programming as well. But there are some limitations to it. Like don't burden yourself a lot with classes and competitive programming. More try to have a good balance, and that totally depends on personal preference. How do you want to balance it out? That's
Okay, so basically, like, I have to assess myself if I talk about that. Like, what should I do? But, like, obviously, you have mentioned that you should not skip the stuff which is taught in college, but you have to make sure that you are also doing something extra so that you can add to your resume. Now, I'll give you a reason behind that, because if I talk about in terms of what is being taught in college, so, like, obviously companies assume that you have just studied that because you have to complete your examination, you want to get a degree. But if I talk about if you're going to do something extra, obviously companies will realize that, okay, you have done something extra. That means you're serious about your career. Now, Rishabh, you have mentioned a lot of things, if I may, but you did mention one thing, that you started your, I mean, learning journey from the very starting of your college days, that is first year. Now, I want to understand one thing. Is it is it compulsory that I should be starting my journey from first year? And if I do, what is the advantage I get compared to me starting my career? Seriousness about career maybe in third year or maybe in fourth year.
Mm, the first thing I'll advise to all the freshers of the college is like try to explore everywhere. Like there are people who get interested in development. There are people who want to go to blockchain. There are people who want to go to open source, or there are people who like competitive programming. So explore everything. Uh, there is, yes, there will be an advantage if you are into something early on, but if you are good enough to grasp everything, you can do the same thing in a say few months or so. What I'll give you an example. In my first year, I started with app development and I was doing competitive programming alongside as well. But to be honest, I was not able to focus on both of them. So last year October, I left app development completely and I started giving my 100% to competitive programming. And in a span of 7 or 8 months, I started jumping ranks a lot. And in one of the websites called CodeChef, in just a span of say 7 months, I reached all India rank of 500. So
Okay.
there is no particular advantage if you start early. Yes, there will be a bit advantage, like you'll have few things on your hand beforehand, but it's this doesn't mean that if you start late, or if you start late, you won't be reached there. You just need the proper dedication. I've read a lot of posts saying that if you're just dedicated for say 6 to 8 months, you can reach anywhere, but you need to be consistent and dedicated.
Okay, so
That's
basically, like it's not about how many hours I'm giving. It's about how disciplined if I am talking. How disciplined I am. Now,
yes,
obviously, you mentioned one good point that you started with the app development, and then you maybe in second year you decided that this is not what you want to do, and you want to go ahead with competitive programming. Now, obviously, maybe many students are asking this question: how will I decide like what do I want to do and what do I don't want to do? So obviously, I want to say one thing: your body, or I would say your brain, will automatically give you feedback when you'll sit for programming, and if you don't like it, it will say no, I don't like it, and you'll go for competitive programming, and if you'll enjoy, so you should go for that kind of field. Now, obviously, this answer cannot be given either by Manas, if I talk about, or me, because obviously we don't know about you. So this is something you have to understand from yourself only. Now, I want to understand one more thing right now. So if I'm aiming for this kind of an internship, let's say if I'm aiming for big companies internship, apart from competitive programming, or I would say critical thinking, which is again an important factor, but not the only factor, I believe, what other things I should be doing? And if you can give us a roadmap kind of a thing. So like maybe I just got serious, I just watched this video, I am quite inspired by what you have done. What kind of a roadmap would you give for me for maybe next 6 months or maybe next 1 year, so that I can follow that and I can actually become eligible of cracking that? I'm not saying that there is a guarantee, but yes, I can crack that.
yeah. So first of all, yeah, let's just leave behind competitive programming. But I just want to pinpoint one thing in that. So if you're not into competitive programming, or say you like app development, web development more, just go to lead code and practice few DSA based problems, because in online assessment rounds or in interviews, you will still find those being asked to you. So you still have to go through them. Okay, so let's just leave this behind now. So the second thing that I want to mention is, yeah, you'll have to know a tech stack. You need to learn to develop app or either website. So in my Microsoft Engage program, I was asked to develop software based on certain criteria. The software could have been anything, either an app or a web or anything, or Windows application, a Linux application, it doesn't matter. So that's the other thing. Apart from that, you should know how to write code in object oriented programming languages. Like you should know how to do low level design. So low level design is basically writing clean code and or using class and objects in a better way, in an optimized way. So these three things is that I want to point out. You should know low level design, you should know either one tech stack, and you should be good with algorithms. If you're good with all three, there's no company that you cannot crack. And
Okay,
yeah,
that is awesome. Now, you did mention about clean code. Now,
yeah.
I just want to give you one example. Like when we are learning about this programming, let's say if I talk about Java or maybe Python, if I talk about, so whenever we are
Mhm.
learning programming, obviously we don't have any experience. So we write horrible code. When we talk about clean code, so how as a student right now, I can understand or maybe learn about how to write a clean code because I'm just learning. How can I do that?
Yeah, so the first thing, first way to learn anything, even to write a clean code or to even write code or even to say learn a stack is to work with a team. So
Okay.
first of all, yeah, first of all, try to find someone or try to find a team with whom you can work with. So the way I learned app development was contributing to projects in my club. So over there, I learned a lot of coding techniques, including how to write a clean code, including how to design an architect, how to like design my app, like how the files and folders should be, or what is the naming convention, and all that that comes under the standard way of writing code and the architecture of the app. That's what I wanted to say. So you need to find someone, and sorry, I'm jumping again back to competitive programming, but even in that, you need to find there's something called peer programming. So you need to find someone to program with. You need to find someone to critically think with. Say, I have a friend in my college who comes up every day with some very good problems, very good algorithmic problems, and that is what motivates me to think. So each and every day he just comes up with a random problem, even I don't know how and where, but that motivates me to think critically. And so coming back to clean code, yeah, please have a team with you or a group of people and try to work with them. Or it can be even better if you have, say, a senior who is into that same tech stack, and or a mentor, and just try to work with them, try to have them in your team or get into the team and work as a team. So that is how you learn.
Okay, now I have two counter questions to that. First of all, you mentioned about the finding, I mean, being part of a team where I can actually learn from everyone. Now, I understand the importance of team because I have worked with teams. Now, I belong to a college where maybe people are not interested in this kind of a stuff. They want to go for a different career path, if I talk about, or maybe we don't have this kind of a thinking in our college. Now, what can I do right now? So, what would you suggest?
So there are a lot of ways to find teams. So one way I'll suggest it, go to open source. Say
Okay.
go to a GitHub repository and try to find a repository that matches your tech stack, the tech stack that you are interested in, and try to contribute there. You'll find a lot of people, you'll find a lot of team, you'll find a whole community. So say you're not writing clean code and you pushed say not a clean code to that repository, then people will point you out. Say like they'll say that this your code is missing this, your coding missing that. Please follow these guidelines, read these guidelines, and in the long run, you'll come up with writing clean codes, and you won't even have to sweat for that. So find a community online. That's what. Even if your college doesn't have a community, find it online.
Okay, so basically, you're trying to say is that stop complaining and start using the internet quite easily. And
Those
this
are
is this is actually important. Like the two things which you have mentioned, if you're going to actually contribute in the open source, what is going to happen? You will get the eyeballs of various people who are also contributing to that open source,
yes.
and you won't believe there are people who are working in big companies, maybe Facebook, Microsoft, and they may appreciate what you have done. And I just want to add one more point here, like maybe you guys are aware of it or not. Recently, what happened, like I heard this story in my college days, like Flipkart started hiring people from GitHub because they could see and they could analyze what is happening with the, I mean, what kind of a contribution this particular person is mentioning. Secondly, you mentioned about the mentorship. So this is very important. Like obviously we cannot see ourselves, I mean, through the third person's eye, if I talk about. So when we talk about contributing to open source project or maybe closed source project also, person has maybe 5 years of experience, 6 years of experience, and they say, okay, this is the mistake you're making, you should stop right now. They made that mistake for 5 years, and after that they're just giving you that gist in 5 minutes. That is very important. So great. This is quite a good advice you have given me, that like obviously the students like contribute to open source, and obviously if the question is where do I find open source project, so GitHub is the right way to get started. Now I want to understand one more thing from you. Like, if I talk about in terms of open source, so the confusion which I get is like, how can I contribute to open source? Because right now I am just a student. Okay, I'm just a student, and there are so many open source projects. So, what kind of a way with which I can get started with the open source project? Because obviously you have mentioned about this, so like obviously the people want to know.
Yeah. So There are projects in GitHub or open source, which are not, say, very, they use very advanced concepts of your tech stack. So you can start contributing very small projects or very minute things. Say there are people who just go and read the documentation and make some, say, changes in the documentation, say just a spelling mistake, but that also counts as a contribution. You're going through, reading through everything, you're understanding things, and then you're making changes there. So you can start with the smallest of things and just work your way up, and just start with contributing very small projects on GitHub, and then just progress your way up to bigger projects and harder ones. That's all.
Okay, so like obviously like start with these smaller projects, and obviously if you're not a hardcore, I mean, if you do not have the expertise, obviously you can get started with the documentation part and you can start with that. So Manas, obviously this is some amazing advice you have given to us, like obviously the viewers of the channel. Now I have a last question for you. The question is, what one mistake would you ask the students not to make, which you made, so that they can fast forward their career or fast track the career which like you kind of missed?
Yeah, so I just say this to each and everyone. So first of all, I just start with the saying that you cannot hold two watermelons in the same hand. So you need to drop one or keep one aside. So that is one mistake that I did. I started doing app development, competitive programming at the same time, and after more than a year, I realized that no, this is not the good way. This is not helping. I was not getting better either at competitive programming or at app development. So what I did, I took a very big and hard decision. I left app development completely. So I stopped doing app development completely, but I still know app development. I can get back to it, but I am not doing it right now. And I started focusing 100% on competitive programming. And I'll tell you, I progressed more in those few months, in those 6 months or 5 months, than I progressed in, say, 15 months. So that's the biggest mistake that I did. Please just focus on one single thing, but give your 100% to it. Don't divide it as 50 and 50%. Give 100% to one single thing that you like.
Okay, so basically not holding two watermelons, just hold one so that you can, I mean, that does not get lost. So Manas, it was great having you. Thank you very much for, helping the students out. Now, obviously, if a student want to reach out, I'll link your LinkedIn profile so that they can reach you out. And obviously, my request to students is do not bother him a lot. Just drop him a message and he will respond to you. Like obviously he's a busy guy, he has other things also, so like obviously do not assume that he's not replying. Just make sure that you are reaching him out, and obviously follow him, so because he is now part of this Microsoft community, so whatever good information coming through from him also, so obviously that can give the advantage also. So thank you very much, Manas, and I hope the students have enjoyed something, and maybe you will find a junior from my audience.
Thank you, Vinesh, very much for having it. This was my first interview experience and I enjoyed it a lot. Thank
Okay,
you for having me, and thank you, everyone.
thank you.